Hello, I'm Greg. Welcome to Walled Lake RC. In today's video, we'll be replacing the front skid plate and front bumper mount on the Arma Sentin 3S BLX. We'll also be upgrading the front and rear diffs with silicone earplugs for better traction. If you like what you see, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment. And let's get started. The first part on our list is the Arma front and rear skid plate from Nankin Hobby. The second part is a 3D printed custom front bumper mount from Etsy. I will include links in the description for the first two parts. The next part is readily available at any pharmacy or on Amazon. They are silicone earplugs that I bought at Walgreens. Begin by removing the two front screws through the oval shaped hole of the bumper mount. If the skid plate is not damaged, you will need to remove the two screws underneath the chassis that hold it in place. Then remove the top two screws for the bumper mount. That is the damage to the bumper mount. See the crack? Now remove the screw that connects the skid plate to the bumper. Next, remove the bumper spring from the old mount and reinstall on the new mount. Then reinstall the bumper on the mount. Now connect the new skid plate and then set the entire assembly aside. Now flip the vehicle over and remove the two screws that hold the front skid plate along with the 5 other screws that hold the front shock tower and steering links. Next, remove the 4 screws that hold down the rear shock tower and rear skid plate. Next, remove the rear skid plate and flip the vehicle over. Now remove the 2 screws through the oval hole on the rear bumper. Now set the assembly aside. I'm removing the dust cover and the Velcro for it. Though you can't see it, I'm gripping the drive shaft to remove it. The drive shaft simply collapses for removal and installation. It can be tricky. Next, disconnect the top of each front shock and disconnect the links from the shock tower. I forgot to remove some screws from earlier. Now remove the shock tower. The axle shafts are 2-piece shafts, so you can simply remove the diff and yoke assembly with the half of each axle shaft attached. Now, I've already filled the front diff with silicone earplugs. I will demonstrate this on the rear diff. The front and rear diffs are identical, so there's no need to demonstrate on both. You don't have to grease the ring and pinion gears, but I like to for protection against wear. You should definitely grease the bearings. You can use regular wheel bearing grease, but I recommend marine grade for its water resistance. Next, reinstall the diff. The axle shafts have splines and will only go together one way. Now you can reinstall the shock tower and then reconnect the shocks and suspension links. Now flip the vehicle over and install the skid plate and begin replacing screws. Be sure that the pins for the steering arms are lined up for the screws. Once you've completed that, finish installing the front bumper. A fact about myself, I was addicted to soap, but I'm clean now. Here I'm just removing more Velcro for the dust cover. Now remove the battery strap that goes through the chassis spline. Next, flip the vehicle over and remove the screw for the spline. I use a hot racing aluminum motor mount and chassis spline. My chassis spline has a second screw that attaches the spline to the motor mount. The factory spline is red and only uses one screw that is underneath the chassis. The spline will slide out. The factory spline can be difficult and may require gentle prying. Be sure to clean any dirt and old grease from the parts. Next, you need to pull up on the pull tab and slide the motor and transmission assembly forward. This can sometimes be difficult and may require gentle prying. Now disconnect the shocks from the shock tower. Next, disconnect one or both suspension links and remove the shock tower or swing it out of the way. Now you can remove the diff and yoke assembly. Begin disassembly of the diff by sticking a 2mm hex screwdriver through each axle shaft and unscrewing the screws to remove the axle shafts. Then remove the 2 screws on the diff yoke and separate the diff yoke. Pay attention to how the ring and pinion are installed in the yoke because they will only work one way. Next, remove the 4 screws for the diff and open the diff. Pay attention to how the gears are assembled in the diff or take a picture. Clean out the old oil and reassemble the gears. Next, fill the diff with the earplugs. I find it easier to cut them in half. The diffs in this vehicle are open diffs. This modification converts the diffs into locking diffs and helps give you better traction. Now you can carefully reassemble the diff and yoke. I recommend applying grease to the motor mount slides and the chassis spline to aid in future maintenance, repairs, or upgrades. Now reinstall the diff and yoke assembly. Now reinstall the shock tower, and do not forget to reconnect the shocks and suspension link. Now, reinstall the motor and transmission by sliding it backwards into the slots. Now reinstall the bumper and skid plate and replace the screws to finish the installation of the shock tower. Finish by reinstalling the chassis spline. Going to reinstall the dust cover, but it's self-explanatory, so I'm not going to do that in the video. Also, the other day I applied to be a doorman, but I didn't get the job due to lack of experience. That surprised me. I thought it was an entry-level position.